have paid us in kind by being so cruel and vicious against us. We are simple people. We are a very small family. Let us be. Do whatever you want, but please, Mr. President, I beg you, don't kill us. Don't kill my children. You have caused me enough pain for the last 1 year. Please, leave me alone. Let me be. God will take care of me. I don't have to have security. I don't have to have drivers. I don't have to have cars. Please allow me to have my peace, if nothing else. And remember, I was there for you when you needed a man to be there for you. Let the courts of law uphold and protect our Constitution. I ask the Chief Justice, Martha Koome, to live true to the fidelity of our Constitution, to make sure that this is a country of the rule of law, to allow the court process to take place and ensure that this process is not nugatory. There are orders asking that Rigathi Gachagua remain in office until this matter is heard and determined. Let it be. Thank you very much.
Just a quick one.
The home of politics, policy, and polity. A few minutes ago, you've had a news conference by the former deputy president. Should I refer to him as the former deputy president?
Yes, he is. There's no way back.
Well, we've had a news conference by the former deputy president, and he has made some serious allegations that border on national security. Owidi, what did you make of that news conference?
It was ridiculous, but that was expected of Rigathi Gachagua.
Why was it expected?
It was expected because we have known him. A brilliant society like the one we live. We look at our leaders from their statements, from their actions, from their utterances. We know their character and we can predict them whenever they see a mic in front of them. Since the whole of these things began, Rigathi Gachagua has been trying to win public sympathy. And his target has always been President William Ruto. Today, if Rigathi Gachagua's car gets a puncture on the road, he will blame President William Ruto. And
well,
so,
he made some allegations that not a long time ago he was in Kisumu.
Yes.
And members of a security agency went to his room and they wanted to poison him.
Yes.
He also made another allegation that he found his room bagged.
Yes.
Is that what you expect of somebody who has served in the presidency?
If he really thought that was true, he should have kicked then, but he's kicking too late. I don't know what he's saying, because if his security was withdrawn yesterday and a month ago they were there and such a thing happened, and those are policemen and police officers, what did they do? Did they arrest anybody? Did they report it anywhere? Unless he was assuming that whatever happened to him then was being done by somebody more powerful than him, that he cannot even report it, which is not true.
Was it
those officers that he's given, the same ones senior government officials are given, are not only for security, they are for your safety and security. They ensure that you don't eat anything bad. You ensure you don't endanger yourself. If you are on the highway, they ensure that you wear a belt. They ensure that you sit correctly when you are asleep. They ensure that you don't sleep with your specs on your face, because if anything happens, the glasses can cut you. That is the job of those officers that dignitaries are given, not just security, even your safety. So if he is making claims such as the ones he was making, and I've been to the presidential functions, especially even that Nyanza, I was with the president from day one to the end. And each time there was an opportunity for people to eat. It was a buffet. There was no time for somebody being given his own. And those officers you are given ensures that they know the source of water that you are being given, the source of food that you are about to eat, the seat you are going to sit on. Even me, as small as I am in government, when my security is around me, they ensure all that happens. What about the DP?
So you have the benefits of a security and safety officer?
Of course I do.
Wow.
small man.
The security.
What are you talking about, a small man?
No. You are evaluated. In this country, they will evaluate and find that it is necessary that you have one. There are some people who are also at the same level as me who don't have, because their risk levels are lower. In Kenya, you are evaluated.
So it means
of course, you ask for, but you are evaluated.
It means you're a big fish.
I'm not a big fish, but
You're
deserve.
not a man. Now, would you say that President Ruto nominating Honorable Riggy Gachagua as his running mate was a big mistake?
It was a big mistake, but I think at that point in time, the president was very vulnerable, and you know how aggressive Riggy Gachagua can be. We all know from what we had that he could not let that thing go to anybody. It was a standoff. And even him, he has come to publicly say that for 17 hours, there was a standoff because, according to him, that is his side of the story. Kindiki has not talked about it, that there was a standoff for 17 hours because President William Ruto had discovered that both of them are equal to the task. Okay. And so he had to pull Kindiki aside and plead with him and tell him, Kindiki, you are a younger man. You still have your future ahead of you. Maybe you can leave me try now. In future, you could get this same position and move on with it. And that is what he said happened. So it does not mean that he was the better person that the president desperately needed. Even him, he fought for that place. So to come to public and tell us that he's the Messiah that President William Ruto needed, that was to help him get the Mount Kenya vote, is to get it all wrong. We were all there. We were adults. We were all there and we saw what was happening. President William Ruto had already run away with all the MPs in Mount Kenya together with the people. All he needed now is to reward them for the support they already gave them. At that point in time, even Azimio, that was then led by the sitting President Uhuru Kenyatta, could not have proper political rallies in the mountain region because they were supporting President William Ruto. So for Riggy to come today and say he's the one who made President William Ruto win the vote of Mount Kenya is to lie to us in daylight.
Okay, now, as a communication researcher and scholar, you'll have noticed that Riggy G has been having a series of news conferences. The first series were held in his mother tongue. Then I came to other vernacular stations. And then there was one before the National Assembly matter where he said it was going to be a circus. And the one he had today. So what has he been telling Kenyans?
Well, I think to a large extent, if you look at what he's been telling Kenyans, it's much ado about pretty much nothing. The concrete...
So all in these conferences, it's been hot air?
Hot air. I mean, at some point, he was coming out as a very courageous man who is out to face any challenges, and the next time was pleading with the president. So he's been neither here nor there. I mean, you can easily say that he didn't know how to confront what was ahead of him. He actually probably understood the magnitude of what was coming his way, but he had no strategic way of dealing with it. And even if he had, I think his communication was pathetic. You don't project yourself as a stoic and determined fellow who is going to confront his challenges. Then all of a sudden you go begging on your knees. You don't unleash your foot soldiers to abuse the president. Then all of a sudden you start pleading with the president. And again, there are things you don't say. There are certain things that will not cover you in glory when they come after. The train has bolted, so as it were. And I think looking at everything that he has said in the media, including that press conference that he had before he appeared in Parliament, he didn't cover himself in glory. As a matter of fact, there are things he said before he appeared in Parliament that made the situation even worse for himself. He went about talking about, all these charges, but in the process, he attacked Parliament without knowing.
Because he said it was going to be a circus.
Yes, then he went to Parliament, and it was a big problem for him because you don't call parliamentarians, as players in a circus, and then you want to appear there and get credibility. Now, to a large extent, I would say that I disagree with my brother here.
The big fish.
Yes.
With, security and safety officer.
For me, to an extent, you can actually say that President William Ruto had, the bulk of the mountain region with him. The only challenge was that if he hadn't gone with Rigathi Gachagua, you see what Rigathi Gachagua is doing right now would have been catastrophic then. It would have cost them an election back then. And I think it was safe to go with Rigathi because then that was likely to galvanize. Because, it's easy to talk to a professor and reason with a professor and tell a professor, by the way, this is the situation. But I think it was actually practically impossible to tell Rigathi Gachagua that he was not going to be the running mate and still have UDA, intact. UDA and Kenya Kwanza intact. So they probably knew that this was coming, after the election, and you can tell that they just preempted what was going to happen, and they allowed him to continue with the hate and hateful messages that he had before the campaign. And looking at it critically, Dismus, I can tell you, probably UDA knew that they needed to win and they needed Rigathi to behave the way he behaved after the election. But Rigathi's advisors failed him because there was a conversation, there was a narrative to win an election. And I think he was the poster boy. He was actually the star boy leading that narrative. Hit anyone who comes against William Ruto and hit them hard and indiscriminately. It didn't matter who they were.
He was like a bulldog.
Yes, it didn't matter who they were. Just finish them and he let them disseminate them, because by doing that, we'll create a pathway for William Ruto. But they didn't give him, his advisors didn't give him the script of when that ought to have stopped.
When to stop dancing?
Yes, because once you win an election, no one is an enemy. You have a manifesto that you need to implement. You have a country that you need to unite. And I think he continued with the narrative of hateful messages and hurtful messages, and he hurted so many people. And he created this very toxic, environment around his office and around the presidency. And in as much as we sympathize with him, you can't blame anyone for his downfall. It is Rigathi Gachagua himself who called it on himself.
It's very clear that he actually cooked his own goose. Right from the first speech he delivered at his inauguration, when in the presence of international leaders, he started to wash our dirty linen and dry it in public for Tom, Dick, and Harry. But still, coming back to Professor, had he retained you as his impeachment communication advisor, what would you have done differently?
It would still be in office, man. I've got pedigree. You see, the thing is, you ought to draw a line. The Kenyan politics anywhere. Politics is a battle, and you have to find a way of winning the battle. And I think UDA did very well. I don't agree with their messaging because it was very divisive. It won them an election. But you see, the way they were acrimonious, the way they attacked everyone, they had an opportunity. If I was his communication advisor, I would have toned everything just by 50% and told him, now, what you need to do is very simple. Speak to the mass public in such a way that the responses that they would give you would elevate your stature as a statesman. I think no one told him that. No one told him that he was now the deputy president. He was not the head figure that was used to attack President Uhuru Kenyatta, to denigrate Raila Odinga. No one reminded him that this issue of, shares in government is unheard of. We know, all Kenyans know that once you win an election, there are people who are rewarded. We know, but no one goes gloating about that.
People like Owidi.
Yes, no one goes gloating about that and saying that now we have government, we are rewarding our people. No one does that. No one stands on a public podium and says that they've ring-fenced State House with Mutegos. No one does that because after an election, even the aspirations that the people who did not vote for UDA had were vested in the alternative government, which was Azimio. And therefore, for these people, they want leadership. They don't want a continuation of a leadership that will keep attacking that which they had vested their aspirations. And I think to a large extent, changing who Riggy G was very difficult. But tweaking his communication and his approach is a fairly easy thing that they failed to do, and I must say that they failed him.
Now, there were media reports that 108 staffers from his office have been sent on compulsory leave. I don't know whether you had a chance to socialize with the names of those 108 officers and whether it's consistent with the expectations of Chapter 6 and Article 10. just going through the names. I know the Public Service Commission has been giving opinions about the number of people who are employed in the public sector. But what was your analysis of those names?
I mean, you see, if you look at those names, it's clear that a lot of the things that he was accused of, manifest themselves in even those names, the people he had around him, the things that he's been doing. But I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, if you were to accuse Rigathi Gachagua of having a staff that was entirely drawn from his village or his backyard, then no one stands innocent. You just pull out the PSS and CSS that we have in this government, the chiefs that we have in different parastatals. And to a large extent, Rigathi is going because of politics. And Kenyans need to rise to the fact, to the realization that if MPs can break ranks and debate Rigathi's issue robustly like they did, what happens when we have other critical issues in the society? And then number two, when Jesus Christ asked, people who brought this woman, was accused of being a harlot in front of him, that he who has not sinned should be the first one to cast the stone. We need to come back to our MPs and ask themselves, if you look at the top leaders who are consequential in this country, if they were put on the same pedestal that Rigathi was put on this trial, would they still cast that stone? And the fact that most of them won't cast that stone tells you that Rigathi is going not because leaders want him to go, but he's going because it is politically expedient for certain forces in this country to have Rigathi Gachagua out of the way. And I mean,
certain forces.
He's
number 2 in Kenya. So
yes, he's number 2. So the forces above him and the forces that are apologetic to the forces above him. And it opens a very conscious conversation that the leadership need to be aware of, that this probably is not going to be the end, of this system. If we have a system that gave rise to an individual occupying a top office like the one Rigathi was occupying and standing accused of the things that this individual was accused of, then it is not about Rigathi Gachagua. It is about this system that gave us Rigathi Gachagua. And until we deal with this system, we are not safe even if we deal with Rigathi Gachagua. And the people who are thinking that they've sorted the problem by sending the deputy president away, better watch this space, because the problem is still very big.
Now, Owidi, Riggy G had 11 charges. Are those the 11 charges that sent him home, or in fact there is a charge that we don't know? Because, looking at those charges, well, they're heavy. You can talk about inheritance and disinheritance, insubordination. But is there a charge known only to the members of the National Assembly and Senate that was not made public? The Mura is trying to figure out.
Respond to there. Usually, I like plugging holes when one has spoken, because when you sit here and eyes are on you out there, and there are some things you forget and leave out. Number one, a person who keeps on rubbing it that I'm brilliant, I am strong, I am truthful, I am courageous, he's none of those.
So you're saying Riggy G is not a truthful man?
He's not a truthful man.
Not a
I
mobilizer.
said here before, he's not a truthful man. He's a brazen man.
He's not a mobilizer?
He's not a mobilizer.
He's not wealthy?
The thing that he has said that I've heard is that he's a truthful man, which he's not. He's a brazen man. A brazen man is that guy who would say anything, even things that I personally would be too embarrassed to say if I was sitting on that seat. But he mistakes them for being truthful. He's not popular either. In fact, what do you see happening with him that in his heart, he believes that the mountain is in his heart? No, it's not in their heart. It is simply is in their faces all the time. If he's impeached like he has already been done, he will go away and they will forget about him and they will embrace the new DP. That is
Professor Kithure Kindiki.
That is Professor Kithure Kindiki. And when my friend was saying that President William Ruto needed Riggy G to win, That is not entirely true. You know, the way Riggy G is talking now is very different from the way he used to talk before election. There is confidence that you gain from a new office. Like today, you see the way I look weak. Make me anything bigger than what I am today. You will see a very charismatic and confident person going forward. Offices make people confident, make people gain more charisma. It gives you a little more time to think before you say anything.
You know, on the same note, the former CS for Health and Kumicha has been complaining that wherever people see her wanasema kwamba huyu ndio waziri wa afya. So was she the office? I mean, now, what do you make of that?
Sorry?
Nakumicha. I don't know whether you saw the soundbite where she's complaining that she wants Kenyans to pray for her, that she doesn't hold that office anymore. So she's feeling like fish out of water.
If you are given an office and you can't get the courage that comes with that office, then you are really not built for that. So with her, I don't want to talk about her now.
Okay.
But so
you want to talk about Riggy G?
When you looked at UDA campaigning in the last general election, it was a star-studded team. It had people who are beautiful orators with content and context and excellent delivery. Rigathi was just one of them. And if that seat that was given to Rigathi was given into any one of those campaign stars that were in UDA, probably they would have even made better campaign people for President William Ruto. There's something people forget. When somebody has got an office and he looks confident, in fact, they suddenly even look intelligent, even when they are not. Officers. So you gave that office to anybody else, he would have done well. So leaving that. But there are some arguments which I also don't accept in a place like this or elsewhere. I call them gracing field arguments, like Kufa Makanga, Kufa Dereva. Those are gracing field arguments.
Meant for herders.
Yeah, wakichuga ng'ombe, unasema kwa nini, even this one, people keep on quoting that whoever has not done the things Riggy G has done to cast the first stone. Are we going to leave thieves who have been arrested because there are some more who have not been arrested? Riggy G is a serial offender. When a serial offender is arrested, he will always want to suggest that, okay, you have arrested me for committing this crime, but crimes are still being committed even when I am here. So it may not necessarily be. Those are called gracing field arguments. So Riggy G is a serial offender, and because of being a serial offender, he has finally been arrested. Let him deal with them. In fact, the moment we have dealt with him, we will look and check if there are other offenders out there. Now you are asking me a question which I now want to go back to.
Yeah, there are, out of those 11 charges, are those actually the 11 charges? Are these 11 charges, for lack of a better word, is the one that Mora is made to believe that there is a hidden charge somewhere?
There are certain things that took place in the impeachment of Riggy G from day one. Majority of it were meant to just obey the law, the constitution. But the real reasons for which Riggy G is being impeached are the crimes he committed to the people of Kenya and to his boss. But you see, because the law wants certain procedure to be followed, we had to do. Even take, for example, the so-called public participation. That type of public participation that we did when we were trying to impeach Riggy G is not possible in this country, because Article 118 insists that at any time Parliament is doing anything, there has to be public participation. Will we have such public participation every time Parliament is sitting down to do something? We can't. The public participation that was envisaged in the Constitution was so that the people must be aware of whatever is being done on their behalf. For example, you are making a law. The people must participate. They must sit in Parliament, some of them, as that is being made. There should be media in that Parliament to tell the people sitting out in Nyalgunga that there's a law being made. For example, Uhuru sneaked a law into Parliament which barred the sale of unprocessed milk. There was no public participation because that time there were no TVs in Parliament, and it passed.
Who is that?
There's a law that bans selling of unprocessed milk.
Who sneaked the law?
Uhuru Kenyatta. It was
But during President Kenyatta's time, there was a parliamentary live broadcast.
Yes, but they evaded it.
Also, they
and
did it
they
in
also
camera.
something they call omnibus bills. They bring so many things put together, and the media misses a key thing. Even when they were banning the use of animal manure in our farms, that is a law that is anti-people, anti the poor. So those are the mischiefs that putting public participation in the constitution came to cure. If you say that we are going to have public participation the type we had for Riggy G, we are going to have papers with 11 questions, fill them up, are we going to count that and say this number of people? And let me tell you, from the constitution we have today, even if 90% of the people did not want Riggy G to go home, they were not going to replace the verdict of parliament. So we were not going to use public participation to replace the power that the people gave parliament through a constitution in which they participated better than they were participating in this thing.
Is there any legal instrument in Kenya which demands that after public participation, that the MP must, say an MP wanted to vote to impeach Rigathi Gachagua, but having gone to his constituency, there's public participation, and his voters in Nyamunini say you cannot impeach Riggy G.
There is nothing like that, and there will never be, because public participation is subjective. It cannot be objective. Because, first of all, public participation is not a must that you must. It's only that parliament must facilitate you to be there. But once you have been facilitated, if you choose not to be there, it's your problem.
So the public participation done by the National Assembly during the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua, was that a waste of public resources?
It was purely meant to stop the courts in case he was going to use the courts to come and say that we have not done public participation. The moment there are TVs in that assembly, we are participating, even if I'm sitting in my sitting room.
Owilla,
that public participation was not meant to be a referendum. It was not meant to be an opinion poll where things are counted and you come and say this number failed to do this, so we cannot impeach Gachagua. In any case, there are some people in this country that even if they murder you and you want to take them to jail, the public may still say leave them.
Now, Professor, you may not be a lawyer, but you understand law.
Yeah.
Is this impeachment a legal process or is it a political process? And if it's a political process, to what extent does the judiciary come in? And we had, my last count is 26 petitions. Kerugoya, everywhere in the petitions were flying left, right, and center.
I mean, the moment you're in a political space, whether you call it judicial, quasi-judicial, or whatever name you want to give it, it's a political process. Because what Parliament does is Parliament impeaches, but it is the Senate that removes a deputy president, a deputy governor, from office, And I think that in itself is 100% a political process, because the submissions that they make, they speak eloquently, but at the end of the day, we know that the political paradigm or the political dimension has an overbearing influence on the decision that they ultimately make. And I think the biggest concern today is the way everything is brought to Parliament. There is the perception that majority of the bills that are brought to Parliament, motions that are brought to Parliament, including this one on impeaching the deputy president, have a very high political undertone, and there's a perception that they're engineered by the executive. And therefore, even the due process that is supposed to be legal has like 90% or even more than 90% political undertones to it. But, our Constitution, and I agree with Calvin's here, our Constitution is very clear that we have a representative democracy.
You've elected people to the National
Assembly. You've elected people to make a decision for you.
And you've given them agency to take decisions on your behalf.
Yeah, they have the option of coming to listen to the people who elected them and listen as much as they can. But the power that we gave them presupposes that we made a decision and say that if this guy was to make an individual decision, he'll make the right decision for all of us. So MPs, when they go to Parliament, I think public participation becomes a very key aspect in giving them the sentiments that are prevailing. But it doesn't compel them to go with the sentiments that are prevailing. Because the representative nature of democracy presupposes that they also have the wherewithal to make the right decision for the people that they represent. Because those people may not have the right information. So MPs have that. But to a large extent, in this situation, the situation of Riggy G, I agree that Parliament would still make decision based on what they think is right for this country. But the prevailing sentiments that people have given cannot be wished away. Whether they voted with the interest of the people or with what they thought is right for the people is neither here nor there. And I think Calvin has also alluded to this, that when you act on the floor of Parliament and you act against the wishes and the sentiments that have directly been expressed by the people, you're also sending a signal. And there are two things you're sending. One, you're sending a signal that you're making the right decision for the people, even if they don't agree with that decision, which is a good thing. But the second thing is you're making a decision, you're sending a signal that you're making a decision that may not be in the interest of the people, in which case there is someone else that decision is serving. And I think in the Kenya that we live in today, the perception is that most members of Parliament are actually making decisions that are serving an interest, and that interest is not the electorate that gave them that power. But when I say it...
But there's a contradiction there, because if you take a decision which does not serve the interest of your employers, it means after 5 years they are going to discipline you.
Exactly. After 5 years, they're going to discipline you. And that's what I'm saying. That if to a large extent that perception prevails for the next few years until the next election, the first thing that is likely to happen is the electorate is likely to remember that these people are making a decision in the interest of another power, not us as the sovereign people. And what would happen is if the decision that they made collectively addressed their issues, then that power is likely to benefit. But if the decisions that they're making collectively, does not address the issues, and that is what I've said, that to look at what is happening today and wish away what Kenyans expressly stated in public participation and hope that by removing Riggy G, you've sorted the problem, and keep reminding Kenyans that, if you are guilty of stealing, you are charged. We are not going to stop charging you because there are other thieves. If we go with that mantra and deal with Riggy G and not come back and deal with the other thieves that we've left, then it means that the consequences will inform the decisions that Kenyans make. And people keep saying that, Kenyans are very forgetful lot. Very soon Kenyans will forget, they'll still elect the same people. What people forget is that this is the only regime, the Kenya Kwanza regime is the only regime that rode to power on the promises of changing the plight of the poor. Before this regime, all the other regimes were making promises that were neither here nor there. And no one was actually seeing a tangible promise that was relating to them. But you see, the hustler narrative resonated so much with the guys at the bottom of the pyramid, and they had a lot of expectations. Now, what has happened? Since this regime came to power, even the common mwananchi's plight, has not remained the way it was. He is worse off. And you cannot tell me that if Kenyans have always forgotten, they will forget. Kenyans have always forgotten in situations where we've elected regimes that have changed nothing in our lives but have left us slightly better than we were or at the same place where we were. But this is a regime where MPs are going against the wishes of the majority of the people who elected them, and they say that on top of the hill, that I'm serving the interests of the person who made me ride to Parliament, the yellow wave that swept the Mount Kenya region. And because
you're in a yellow jacket.
Yes, I know I'm in a yellow jacket. And because they keep reminding us of that, what they don't know is because we are every single day we are getting worse off, there is a high likelihood that there'll be some changes. I don't think we'll forget. You only forget if someone finds you somewhere and leaves you at the same place. But when someone finds you somewhere and leaves you worse off, I don't think you're likely to forget it easily.
When Kenya Kwanza took office, if you just use one example about the cost of unga, would you say that Kenya Kwanza has addressed the... No,
unga is a very simplistic. Let me tell you, they are very simplistic.
About sugar imports, there's a significant increase in sugar. The cost of, farmers, the amount of money they are paid for milk.
let me tell you, I think
I'm taking into active consideration that Kenya Kwanza did not inherit a stellar economy.
No, that's a lie.
The economy was not smelling red roses.
No, that's a narrative, and I don't think I'm intelligent enough to know what a narrative is and what a narrative is not. When President Uhuru Kenyatta took over the reins of leadership in this country, our GDP was at around 45 billion USD. When he left the reins of power, our GDP was at around 102 billion USD.
And the public debt?
Yes. No, the public debt is a measure of what he had invested in. And I think the groundwork that he had laid was very solid. That if he had a government that would leverage the infrastructure that he had developed, it would change the lives of Kenyans who would have more on top of our table.
So you're saying that a public debt is not a significant metric?
Public debt, you see, let me tell you.
And the only way, take into account inflation and interest rates.
Let me tell you, the only way a government raises resources, to address the plight of the people is through borrowing and taxes. That's it. Now, there is no difference between what we experienced during Uhuru's in terms of borrowing and what we're experiencing now. The only difference is that right now we are taxed more. And let me tell you, the narrative that is being bandied here about fertilizer and the price of unga is a very simplistic way of hoodwinking the common mwananchi. You can easily reduce the price of unga and then tell people that that's a measure of economic progress. It is not. You can easily tell people that you're going to fertilize their land to economic prosperity. Fertilizer is a very insignificant percentage in the grand scale of production in agriculture.
Inflation?
No, let me not come to inflation. Let me go to the question that you're asking. Being told that this is the cost of unga, being told that this is the cost of fertilizer is lying to Kenyans. When at the end of the day, Kenyans who are not in the tax bracket have no incentive of getting themselves into the tax bracket and contributing to our GDP. Lying to Kenyans about the cost of unga and subsidized fertilizer, when at the end of the day, Kenyans who have a payslip are suffering punitive tax regimes. They are young men and women. These guys who came to the streets did not come to the streets because they wanted. They came to the streets because of two things. Majority of them are from campus. They get jobs. They're told you'll be paid 50,000. They look at the taxes. Their salaries end up at around 28, 31,000. Majority of them live with their parents. They look at what their parents are going through after the inception of this regime, and things are bad. So, Kenyans are intelligent enough to know that the cost of unga is a very cosmetic measure of progress. You can reduce the cost of unga, you can send people to the supermarket, but Kenyans will always understand the progress of their lives and what the regime is doing on the basis of how life is bearable for them. And that's the question we need to ask ourselves. If we remove Riggy G from the deputy president's post today, are we addressing the issues that Kenyans have raised? If Calvin is saying that there are more thieves, and therefore we deal with Riggy G and come back and deal with these other thieves, are we going to see those thieves dealt with? If we don't see that, I don't think there's a lot that this regime would celebrate by sending just one person home.
Before Owidi comes in, leadership affects everything, and to say that the cost of unga is not a key metrics, I also think you are being unfair. But looking at the news conference by Rigathi Gachagua, was that a declaration of war? Every Kenyan remembers a gentleman by the name Mr. Kenneth Matiba, and he equated himself to Ken Matiba, and he suggested that President Ruto is taking him in that route of Ken Matiba. Ken Matiba is remembered as a man with liberation credentials. What did you make of that?
Well, I think that's a problem. That's a problem with Riggy G's communication team. You keep dropping things that make you look a bit silly. The credentials of Kenneth Matiba and the short history of Riggy G from a one-term MP, to a monument of hate and hateful campaign messages, and then all of a sudden you are coming in front of Kenyans and saying that you are suffering the same fate as Kenneth Matiba. It's a mockery of the person that Riggy G is, because he's nowhere close to what Kenneth Matiba is, and it doesn't endear him to any Kenyan. Because then what he has done is very simple. He has the people who are even sympathetic to Riggy G's plight, as it were, today, are probably going back, because there are Gen Zs who don't know who Kenneth Matiba is. But he has brought that name in a very interesting
there's a lot of
context.
Google search now about Ken Matiba.
Yes, there's a lot of, and you see, when they juxtapose who Ken Matiba was, what he did, and the history of Riggy G, it will not augur well for Riggy G. So even the few that he had endeared himself to by, projecting himself as someone who is suffering, bringing in Kenneth Matiba is undoing everything that he's done completely.
Now, Owidi, Professor here has indicated that the cost of unga is not material, that fertilizer subsidy is not material, that in fact that's part of a narrative. Is that what you're doing? Spreading a narrative? That the cost of unga is material while it's not?
If there is any moment that I agree with him, it is these things that people throw around. Like today, instead of people discussing a contract between the government of Kenya and one private company, international, we are discussing Adani. However bad Adani could be, which is not the case, if you visit the headquarters of Adani in India, you will be shocked. A criminal organization cannot grow that big, cannot have that respect from each and every country. But if you want to demonize an organization, even if you choose today, you want to demonize our star, the organization Safaricom, maybe you are in Zambia, Tanzania, you can paint it with anything. And because there are even small places where people have complained of Safaricom service, there are places where people have complained of the way the CEO was elected. You pull those together and leave the good ones out. People from there, those are the only information they have been fed with about the organization, will think it is a devil. So in politics, we can create narratives, sell them, repeat them. And the society in which we live have relatively below average people in intellect. They learn by rote learning. You are not going to give them logic and they will get you. So you see...
What do you mean? There are a good number of Kenyans have got...
Not a good number of Kenyans. The society we live, right from the tail of South Africa to the north of Egypt, we are living in a society, even the world over, the society is generally below average. So they are not going to learn by you explaining to them. They are going to learn through rote learning. You keep on repeating until children playing football on the ground start singing. Start singing Adani. You see, like now, you will go into a band, you will hear people saying, Adani Wewe. So that is what they have done. And this is how they do things. But let us go back to the main issues. One thing that you didn't let me qualify was why I was saying the process at which Riggy G is being removed is largely political. In fact, if we chose a legal way, he would have gone home a long time ago. We would just invoke chapter 6, take him to court with his utterances and he would go. Just that. So he is lucky we have chosen a political process where 349 MPs are going to judge him after listening to him, and 69 senators are going to judge him after listening to him. But let me tell you what happened on the day Riggy G fell sick. Nobody saw Riggy G being sick. There's no record of him being sick anywhere. But we are only told...
His medical doctor indicated as much.
We are all human beings, doctor or not doctor. Riggy G simply was running from what I call cross-examination by a lawyer. When you will listen to the presidential petition, it doesn't matter which side of the opponents you are, whether you are in for Kenya Kwanza or for the Azimio. When the Azimios who are being cross-examined by lawyers, you think they have lost this thing. When the table turns now, it is the other side being cross-examined, you think they have lost. Before the cross-examination, let's assume Mutuse wasn't cross-examined. Didn't he look very much like he got Riggy G? But when he was cross-examined, you thought he lost.
Yeah, people even question
now that is what Riggy G was avoiding. I don't know how Riggy G would have handled cross-examination by lawyers about his interference at KEMSA, which he even admitted. I don't know how he was going to handle cross-examination about shares. Because you see, this shares thing, people have really got it wrong, including some very seasoned lawyers. Even today, I heard Riggy G saying that Musalia Mudavadi, Mutua, Wetangula, and Kilifi, Amason Kingi, they all demanded that they write agreements. But me, as a Christian, I didn't demand. which was his political party that he was going to use to write that agreement? Which was Riggy G's political party?
UDA.
And he was going to write that agreement with who? Because this was inter-party agreements. It was agreements between political formations. So which was his political formation that was going to use? And to write it with who? You know, Riggy G is playing with us.
Is that why you say that he's not a truthful man?
He's not a truthful man, he's a brazen man. These people who had agreements were having agreements between political parties. Agreements between communities or people are illegal in the Kenyan current constitution. That segregation is not allowed in the Kenyan constitution. So, but if they wrote that, maybe saying, okay, maybe he grew up saying that I'm Mount Kenya, I am going to have an agreement with Ruto of Rift Valley. Where would that go?
But wait a minute. Are you suggesting that he actually did not fall sick? That he did a run on
Riggy G was running away from cross-examination by the lawyers. And another thing which he's doing, which probably you have not noticed, Riggy G was remaining with about 3.5 months so that he serves more than half his term so that he can qualify for his pension. So all these court shenanigans is to buy time so that he remains until about that time.
To qualify for a pension.
To qualify for a pension. Riggy G knows that he can only delay something, but he cannot. Because whichever way this court is relying on have no authority to keep in office or remove him. But the only people who have the authority by the constitution to keep him in office or remove him is the Senate and National Assembly. And they have pronounced themselves on that matter.
But I don't is a wealthy man, would a pension be high in his priority list?
Wealthy men take change when they go to supermarkets or even coins. And the reason why they are wealthy is because they respect their money and they guard it jealously.
Tumeelewana.
So even that pension is very critical.
It's very critical. The guy, you know.
And of course it comes with perks. The pension comes with a lot of state privileges.
And when you listen to his language, the adjectives he was choosing, you would think it is Pastor Owuor, who would use 4 adjectives in a row. You don't know, mighty, greatest. You see, all those in a row. You hear him serious. Some of the statements Riggy G was making today at his press conference are things that I expected only his doctor talk about. We are doing serious examination. When you are ill, that you have been rushed to hospital, how would you even know that there's serious things being done to you?
His medical doctor gave him a report after that.
Okay. So Riggy G, and then he comes with allegations that the president Sijui had talked to the airport so that he should not be allowed to go to Sijui to Kwale. Somebody in hospital, why would you worry about him? Because when people are going to Kwale, he was still in hospital. Why would you worry about somebody in hospital? Unless he also knew he was in hospital, but he wasn't sick. He could go to Kwale. What was he going to go to Kwale? A patient. You know, there are even patients in the houses who could not go to Kwale. But this is a patient admitted in a top hospital in Nairobi. You know, there's some allegations.
But he also complained that his security has been withdrawn. I saw him living in a RAV4. Instead of the top of the range vehicles?
We know Riggy G with his public demonstration, documenting things. Did you see the way he acted going to Mombasa in a light blue suitcase and documented his journey from Jomo Kenyatta to Moi International Airport in Mombasa? Do you think those were no accident? He is trying to seek public sympathy. In fact, maybe he could have taken a tuk-tuk to carry Nostra to take him home. Is he telling us that if he was not DP, he did not have a car bigger than a RAV4 to use? He's enjoying us. He's seeking public sympathy. And even his accusations against Ruto, they are not different from the ones he used to accuse Uhuru. Uhuru, don't kill me. Uhuru, blah, blah. Those are the things he did about Uhuru, and later said Uhuru was after all a good man.
So now, Owidi, when we're looking at Riggy G post-impeachment, what options does he have on the table?
Riggy G, he already has the option and is using them very well. He's trying to buy time. Those are the things he's doing. He's trying to build on public sympathy. Because Riggy G cried and said he would want peace. He would like the president to leave him alone to have peace. The president is not the one forcing him to remain in office. If he wants peace, he needs to take a piece of paper A4, write very clearly that it is no longer tenable for him to continue being the principal or assistant of a person he has accused of trying to murder him. And then he goes home and starts building his political future, if he still has any left, near Madeira.
Does he need to resign? I mean, he stands impeached, and Senate confirmed that, so he's already out of office.
You are very right.
He has pushed Kenyans to a situation where we have a deputy president who can't be in office because Parliament and the Senate does not want him, and then we have a deputy president who has been appointed but can't be in office because the due process, has been halted by a conservatory order by the president. And if I got by the courts, and if I got what Calvin is saying clearly, I think he missed the point where he ought to have. I mean, we knew Riggy G was going to spill the beans. I mean, attack everyone. He's good at that. We knew he was going to say all these things about the president. And my imagination was that he was going to use Parliament to do all these things, spill the beans, but then resign before the Senate made, a decision to force him out of office. And I think he missed that. And there's very little option remaining for him because he will clutch to the judicial process. But we know the end is now. His political life, his public life is done. Now, there's nothing he can do to reverse that. He can only buy time, but I don't think there's anything he can do to reverse that.
In the unlikely event that he's reinstated to office.
By who?
By who?
The judiciary.
No.
I'm saying in the unlikely event. I'm very careful with my English.
Yeah.
You taught me good English.
And
in the unlikely event that he goes back to office, can he actually sit in the same room with President Ruto?
First of all, before I respond to that, sorry. Oh, that was your question.
No, it's okay.
Okay, before I even respond to that, Riggy G stands impeached according to the Constitution the day Senate pronounce him impeached. The courts have no powers to act retrogressively. To come and say Riggy G had been impeached, now they want to, unless they are reappointing him. Are they appointing him?
What if the process was irregular?
They can only stop it there, go and talk about its regularity and punish those who have done something irregular. I don't know whether they'll do it. But when we are going to start a battle between the legislature and the judiciary, I think it is a war we are not going to end. Because next time...
There can only be one winner.
Next time Parliament will say, these judges have too much powers in ABCD. We want to amend some of these acts. We want to amend this section of the Constitution. So the judiciary would rather be very careful. This very Parliament they are playing around with, because when this Constitution was made, and we had the various articles that are used to impeach both the president and the DP, there is nowhere it is indicated that they can appeal to the courts. The courts, you can only go to complain about the process. But the Constitution says, once you have been pronounced by the Senate that you are impeached, you are impeached. But so the courts coming to act after that is trying to reappoint you.
But what if he says that he was not heard?
Who was not heard?
Riggy
So that's
G.
the process. That is the matter now he needs to take to court. We can even go back and hear him. But as it stands today, it's not. For example, if you are my tenant, and you run to court that I have thrown you out of my house, the court will only say, maintain status quo, remain in the streets there, let Owidi remain with his house. The courts cannot act retrogressively that we are going back, somebody who has already been fired, we are reappointing him to the position. That is not what the court is supposed to do. Let us not pretend. These lawyers will tell you all sorts of things. I have sat with two very brilliant lawyers together, but one section of the Constitution, they translate it differently.
Actually,
they interpret it differently. So what are you saying? It's one line. So do not rely on them. The law is written in English.
Professor Owilla, would you say that Professor Kindiki is fit for purpose? I've used the term professor as deliberate.
You see, even before the election, I think it was very clear that William Ruto had the numbers. Mm-hmm. So in terms of fit for purpose in bringing in the cloud and galvanizing.
No, first of all, in that office,
in terms of delivery, I mean, of course, he has the mental, the intellectual infrastructure to deliver. I think he's demonstrated that in the ministry that he has served. I mean, he has a few questions around the demonstrations that we had during
around abductions.
Yeah, abductions and all that. But I think he has the capacity to deliver as a deputy president. There is no doubt about that. And as a matter of fact, when you get to certain offices, like Owidi says, there's an infrastructure that is put together. And
108 advisors.
Yes, you have all the information to make the right decisions. But politically, I would say that, I mean, if this appointment was made with the political strategy of what UDA or Kenya Kwanza is looking at in 2027, it's a big miss. I don't think it brings in any value in terms of numbers from the Mount Kenya region. If anything, it's a very antagonistic kind of appointment. It is not likely to compensate for the numbers that they're
antagonistic.
Going to
lose. What do you mean antagonistic?
Antagonistic in the sense that you've taken it from Mount Kenya and you've given it to a part of Mount Kenya that probably does not have the numbers, that can compensate from the other side of Mount Kenya that you've taken it from.
Now, you've raised a very fundamental issue, Professor. Is there a risk in Kenya of ethnicizing some positions of national leadership? That since the deputy president was from Mount Kenya, you've impeached Riggy G, the replacement has to come from Mount Kenya. Why not Nyamuninia? Why not Elwak Mandera? Why not Mombasa?
I don't think there's a risk. Even our constitution is very clear in the appointment even of the cabinet secretaries. It talks about ethnic and regional balance. And I think it's us Kenyans who are trying to take this coinage by Koigi Wamwere to another level, negative ethnicity. We talk about negative ethnicity as if there is no positive ethnicity. I mean, there's a lot in different ethnicities in this country that can be harnessed and brought to the table. So from where I sit, it is politicians who remind us that there's something about ethnicity that can be used as a weapon for political battles. And to a large extent, that has become part and parcel of our political narratives. I'll tell you without any fear of contradiction that I've done a study that I defended this week. I was looking at the constraints to the media's democratization role, and ethnicity is a very insignificant factor, despite the fact that in my entire literature review, there are a number of Eurocentric scholars and even African scholars who have looked at ethnicity as a big barrier to our democracy. It is not, because I did a study, and it is journalists in this country that I went to. It is very insignificant. Maybe it is the methodology that I used, but I want to believe that we have made more negative narratives out of people's ethnicity when there's a lot of positive stuff around it. We can look at Professor Kindiki as a Kenyan with the wherewithal to deliver. But I think we choose, and our political mobilization choose to look at politicians in terms of how can they mobilize and galvanize people from a region. And I think this is a narrative that we need to run away from.
There's some people are describing Professor Kindiki as a transition or DP. What does that mean?
I mean, you're being very economical with what people are saying. People are actually saying that whatever efforts this regime is making, the end is nigh. So the entire cosmetic, machinations around the issues that have been raised since the Gen Z revolution are exercises that would just sustain this government until 2027. I think 2027 is going to be a totally different ballgame for this regime. The yellow fever that carried them to power has to redefine itself. They have to do a lot if they're not going to be, just a transition and a cosmetic government.
Owidi, you notice that Owilla is in a yellow jacket, and he speaks about the yellow fever, which gave Kenya Kwanza power. How does President Ruto manage Mount Kenya expectations, taking into active consideration that a number of senators voted in a manner which is not necessarily aligned with how members of the National Assembly voted from the larger so-called Mount Kenya?
First of all, Owilla is ODM. ODM.
As he pronounced it himself.
No.
Well, are you ODM?
And ODM is orange, and we have bleached orange to become yellow. But nevertheless, what President William Ruto has done in placing Professor Kithure Kindiki at number 2 is the most brilliant thing the president could do, especially.
But would you say otherwise?
At this point in time, would I say
Otherwise?
of?
I mean, whoever he had appointed as number 2, you would say is the most brilliant thing.
No. Kindiki is the. Kindiki has very good qualities of a number 2. We have had number 2s here for me since the days of Moi.
The days of Moi.
I was 11 years when Moi was vice president, so I'm good. So let's go with this way. Kindiki is loyal by nature. In fact, I think you saw the moment Riggy G was appointed to take a place which he believed was his, he became very loyal to Riggy G, even from his body language and statement. He's charismatic. His intellect is on another level. He's acceptable across Mount Kenya. This idea of Mount Kenya, East and West, we can't have people campaigning using Mount Kenya, getting officers using Mount Kenya, but only one section of Mount Kenya benefits. It is time now Mount Kenya remained united under a person from the East. It is time Mount Kenya will remain united under somebody other than the main Kikuyu stream. So that is when they are going to be right. But if they try anything that they think Kindiki should not be the...
One would ask united for what?
Huh?
United for what?
Whatever they want to do, whether it is economic, whether it is political, but it had generally been political throughout. If they have to remain united, everybody in Mount Kenya must benefit, including the minorities. This unity, like the one we have always had with my brother Owilla, that our house is one house for some people, selected homes and families to benefit, that should not happen anywhere. This thing of Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya had already decided that they do not want Uhuru Kenyatta and his team. They want President William Ruto, even before that guy was nominated as the DP. But let's get to this thing called ethnicity. Ethnicity, which we are talking about, is just a dividing line. It is a line that divides people. But there are many other things people can use to divide them, like clans, regions, race, color, education, and wealth. Those can be used as dividing. Even demographics. We are the youth, they are that. People will always find something to divide themselves. So whether we are in a country where we have 42 ethnic communities, that we cannot say is the reason why we are divided. This country called Somalia has one ethnic group, only clans, but they are more divided than us. There is a country called Rwanda, has one ethnic group. Hutu and Tutsis are just clans. They speak one language, Kenya-Rwanda, but they are so divided. Look at Sudan, one ethnic group. It is more split than we are today. Human beings will always find a reason to discriminate against one another. They even say these people are more darker than us, so we are different. Or these people are more shorter than us, so we are different. These people are white and we are black. That is, so we are different. Human beings are divisive in nature. They will always find an excuse to divide them. One time, my brothers in ODM were saying they want to secede from Kenya and have the Republic of Nyanza. I told them, the moment you have that and we no longer have non-Luos to fight with, you will start fighting from North Nyanza and South Nyanza. If you remain South Nyanza only, you will start fighting from Migori and Homa Bay. The human beings will always, until you reach your own home and you say sons of the first wife and sons of the second.
The only wife.
If it is the only wife, they will say those whose houses are on the left, in Lowland, we have those who build on the left and those who build on the right. So if you have 4 sons, 2 will be on the left, 2 will be on the, they will fight like that. Division. Or the educated and the uneducated. They will always get a line. So ethnicity is just a line of division we have chosen to use because it is convenient for politicians to use it and get elected very easily. I hear now in his clan, in his political party, they have started running around telling the Luos that they are not in government. And they are holding political rallies, including Mombasa, to tell the Luos that they are not in government. You know why they are doing that? These lines of divisions make them get elected easily. There are some people who cannot campaign if there is nobody to attack. They need some people to be attacking and saying they belong to so. And that is how even religion succeeded. Without Satan, religion would have not succeeded. Because it is Satan they used to threaten us. Ovidi usipofuata Mungu, shetani atakunyorosha.
You'll go to hell and back.
You'll go to hell and back. Utaanguka na gari sijui wapi. You need somebody to worship so that your things go right. So, ethnicity is just an excuse for the divisions we have.
And finally, is there room for NADCO to cure what you are talking about, ethnicity?
NADCO may not cure. You know, NADCO, as much as people were talking at Bomas, there were some people pulling the strings from behind. There are certain positions they wanted to be captured in that NADCO. NADCO was no different from BBI that was only meant to make Uhuru Kenyatta an executive prime minister and Raila Odinga a ceremonial president. That is what was happening. In fact, the day BBI failed, Uhuru Kenyatta abandoned Raila. He was just walking there in physical, but spirit.
Is that a statement of fact?
Sorry?
Is that a statement of fact that President Kenyatta abandoned Raila Odinga?
He abandoned him. He was just not going to tell him that, you know, BBI has failed, so if you become president, I will get nothing. Do you think President Uhuru Kenyatta betrayed Ruto because of Raila? He betrayed Ruto because of himself. He wanted to be an executive prime minister. The only way to achieve it was to abandon Ruto, take Raila, tell Raila, you know, if I don't support you, you cannot be president. So I am going to support you, but the presidency they are going to give you is not going to be the full one. I will remain this side as an executive prime minister. The Putin way, you get out of power as president, you go back in as a premier.
But NADCO called for very strong institutions, very strong systems, including a very strong IBC.
NADCO was Raila Odinga's tool of getting into government. He has always used such tools of sijui who and who must go, sijui who must resign, such things. And then you call him to a round table and talk to him and say, okay, have this, have that, let's compromise on this, let's write an agreement. All those things that were being canvassed at NADCO, there were laws guiding them. Even the appointment of IEBC commissioners, there are laws in these countries guiding those appointments. And those very laws are the ones Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta used to appoint the Cherera for. But now that the ball is now in Ruto's leg, they want those discarded and new rules kept in place. Politics is a game like that.
So you don't see anything good in NADCO?
There are some good things because, let me tell you, every cloud has a silver
lining.
There are some good things in NADCO, but implementing NADCO the way it is, we may swallow it with some bones and yeah.
No. It says that the NADCO rate has got some bones. Would you agree with that?
I mean, NADCO, like BBI, has some very good things. And I think if I go back to at some point when the president, then the deputy president, was at Chatham House, and he talked about the Kenyan political situation. He strongly talked about the winner takes it all and advocated for the office of the official opposition leader. And I think it's the same thing that was espoused in BBI. It's the same thing that NADCO is calling for. And there are certain provisions in NADCO, in BBI, and what politicians have talked about, and what some of us have talked about, that would probably take our contestations during the elections, to a level where there'll be something for everyone in a fairly democratic way. Because if you look at our politics over the last 3 or 4 elections, the margin of victory is always very small. Mm-hmm. And then
it's almost 51, 49.
Yes. I mean, it could be anyone, and then you look at the constitution and the structure that is provided for who wins and what happens to the person who doesn't win. you're in the bush, so to speak. That's what the president used to say when he was the deputy president, Akomustuni. And I think when you talk about a loser of a presidential election who loses with like 49% of the vote, having no space in governance, then you're talking about a country that is always going to be shaky, because then the aspirations of almost half of the voting population is thrown out, and then they believe that for the 5 years that someone is going to be in power, they're totally left out. And therefore, it doesn't matter what the person who is in power is doing, they will try as much as possible to make everything difficult for the person in power. And both NADCO and BBI have provisions for having, the losing presidential candidate, anchor the aspirations of the people who believed in their candidature in parliament, in an office that has resources, and an office that can oversight the government without being branded a noisemaker. Remember, part of the things that the deputy president, who is now, dethroned, kept saying is that Raila Odinga is a nobody. No one elected him. He has no position in power. Then you juxtapose that with the fact that when things go wrong, almost all Kenyans cry out, why is Raila quiet? And you ask yourself, our constitutional architect does not provide for any person who lost an election to hold forth for the masses, even if things are going wrong. So to a large extent, there are very good provisions in NADCO, just like there were very good provisions in BBI. But I also agree with Owidi here that the political class will always sneak in something mischievous in a provision that addresses the issues of majority of Kenyans. So there could be a number of things that were sneaked in on BBI that were not very good for Kenyans, but it doesn't wish away the things that were progressive and fairly good for Kenyans. If you ask me, as a native of Suna East in Migori, if I look back at BBI and the provisions it had for space, a space in parliament for a losing presidential candidate, the position of a prime minister who was appointed based on the number of MPs in parliament, and the fact that it was going to devolve more funds to the constituency level through through the National Government Constituency Development Fund. More funds are going to go back to the county. Those were very good provisions. But then there was the cheeky side of where constituencies were going to be increased. So politicians will always have that, and I think it's for the public to remain conscious and woke enough to understand that in every provision that originates from the political class, they need to be very vocal to get their voices on the good things, but they also need to be extremely vocal to get their voices on the bad things and expand those bad things in any provision.
There's an ongoing conversation that if the members of the National Assembly can unite and impeach the deputy president with very high numbers, and the senators do the same, then they can pick the nice pieces from the NADCO reports, and in a short space of 2 weeks, crystallize the nice pieces of NADCO and make them law.
That's true. Our members of parliament have distinguished themselves enough times. The only problem that Kenyans have is that they've distinguished themselves in things that have very little to do with the common mwananchi and a lot to do with the political class. So if they just flip that, or if they remain consistent, they start discussing things that touch on the common mwananchi with the robustness that they discuss things that benefit the political class. It would be a very good country we'd be living in right now.
So you're suggesting that the members of the National Assembly and Senate may not have any incentive to pursue Mora's interest with the same energy, vigor like they would done for Riggy G?
Dismus, I can say that anywhere. They have never demonstrated any vigor when discussing issues to do with Mora, Wanjiku, Achieng, Atieno, the way they have done in dethroning Riggy G. Never done that. We've never seen that in this country. Actually, in parliament, I think there was only one MP who didn't vote. That has never happened. So if they just pulled that consistency in everything that they discussed, if even these things that are contested, sometimes we talk about issues like the Adani issues, simply because they've not been canvassed in parliament with objectivity to help people know that our representatives who we sent to parliament have looked at this thing. So we remain in a very indeterminate position where we listen to people in press conferences. People give their own opinions on things that they've not socialized with. Members of parliament have infrastructure to interrogate any document that is of public interest. And they have the wherewithal, because they've been given the mandate by the public, to discuss anything. And I've never had a problem with the ruling party having the majority in parliament. And I don't think they should be apologetic if they have numbers. I mean, they can use that number to pass anything they want, because they actually earned the right to do that. But they also have the capacity and the wherewithal to use those numbers to address the issues of the people who elected them. And to a large extent, I can say without any fear of contradiction, we've never seen that fidelity to the aspirations of the people who elected members of parliament.
I'll pose the same question. The members of the National Assembly and Senate have demonstrated that beyond any doubts that they've got the capacity and competence to implement fundamental changes in our body politics. Mm-hmm. How come they don't use the same energy to pick the good bits of, say, NADCO or BBI, or just some fundamental changes to make Mora a happy woman, or Wanjiko, or Sasha, or Amina?
They need very strong leadership to do that. Let me tell you, even if you took 1,000 most brilliant people and put them somewhere without leadership, they can do nothing.
So are you suggesting that we don't have leaders in Kenya?
And number two, in that very National Assembly, majority of the people you see there, maybe 50 of them to maximum 100 are the people, the only ones worth those seats they are sitting on. Some of them...
That is about 20%?
50, I don't know, it's 20%, but 100 is about a third, slightly over a third, are the only ones worth those seats they are sitting on. You find an MP elected by the people is gone to the ground to discuss about school buses. And he's discussing a school bus for a school that does not have a laboratory, does not have a kitchen, does not have a dining hall, but they have made a makeshift car park for a school bus. A school that, that if you look at their records, the students have never even had an opportunity to travel anywhere officially with those school buses. Those school buses then become tools for the villagers to use to go to funerals. And that is what an MP wants to discuss at funerals that is done. An MP wants to discuss at funerals that he has got a good method of distributing bursary, and he will give it to the best girl and the best boy in each school. Does that go with the policy of let's give it to the needy? And if you have 100 of such MPs in Bunge, don't you think those seats are vacant?
Can we recall them?
You can't recall them because majority of the people represent are no better than them. That is why when the law came that we needed people who have proper degrees in the National Assembly, when I say proper degrees, you know how intelligent a person is measured when they do their class 8 and form 4. Is measured when they do their primary school and secondary school, when there is little interference. But after that, so they can even buy. In fact, there was a time
in the company of a scholar. What do you mean by a proper degree?
Because there are degrees sometimes which are acquired, then there are degrees which are earned. I once talked to somebody, and I told him, but you see, this thing, they need graduates. You know what he told me? Degrees inapatikana too. I also know of a chief who came to me to tell me, I've been fired because I upgraded my certificate. Upgraded. Because that certificate was a D- and they wanted a D+, so he upgraded it. Not by going to class and doing an exam, but by changing the figures. And that is how sometimes you find the people we are dealing with look like. So Parliament can work for us, but it needs somebody who has decided that I'm going to work for the people. Let me take this to Parliament. And it doesn't have to, that when I mean leadership, it doesn't have to be from the minority leader or majority leader or the whip. Anybody can lead in implementing a new law. Anybody not really implementing, but coming up with a new law or a new rule or a new policy. Anybody. See here, Rigathi ilikuwa Mutuse. Mutuse is not the top leader in the assembly. Anybody can do. There was once Donde Bill. Donde was just nobody, but it became very popular. But we elect people who think their role is to manage CDF. We elect...
Anybody can be the person who came up with the CDF.
Anybody.
No, but Professor, is there evidence that if you've got a degree, you've got better outcomes? And using examples like Tom Boyer and the rest, is there evidence that a degree, I don't know how to frame this nicely.
Before you run away with that thing, you know Dismus, let me tell you something. The days when we went to school, you would only get a degree if your intellect is above a certain level. When you ask people why they didn't go to school, they tell you, we didn't have school fees or we didn't have that. And people have started thinking that Owilla is brilliant because Alisoma. No, Alisoma because he was brilliant. It is not the other way around. Yeah, so when I was interviewing the CEO for Lake Basin Development Authority, where we picked Dr. Raymond Omolo, one of the things I wanted to see how people performed in primary school and in O-level, to give me an idea whether these things he's talking about, he understands them, he knows them. That is the time when your intellect is properly measured.
But when you're talking about representative democracy, you're supposed to pick a representative of the population. Professor, how many degree holders do you have in Kenya? Bachelor's degree? Out of a population of about 50 million.
I think we should count the ones who don't have, because I think Kenyans have degrees.
Yes. You'll find thousands of people with it.
Mm-hmm. Are you not stepping on the toes?
No, I'm not saying that a person who is going to be an must really be degree, but the degree is the only measure available that we know
at this stage.
Because look, we have people who will not contribute in the assembly. He will not contribute any idea on the ground. There are tools for voting in parliament and for pressing party kingpins and for talking about distributing CDF. Distributing CDF, even the chief can do. Even the DO can do.
Finally, as we come to the close of the show, you are given to making predictions. What do you see happening next week?
Next week, I think regarding the Shagwa case will be practically and permanently decided. I have told you the things he was trying to hang on and the reasons why he's still sticking where it is. But I wish we had a society which could judge people by their statements and actions and their past and their history. If they would judge Gachagua that way, he would not even be fit to be an assistant chief. That is the truth. In fact, you know why he was running away even from that interrogation? You remember some of the questions Mutese were being asked. When did you qualify for law? When did you? So you have studied for 6 years. But you are the chief justice. If you ask Gachagua, were you a DO? Yes. How did you exit? Where were you between the time you were DO and the time you became an MP? Were you in London? Why were you in... there are certain questions that will be asked, and they're asking you, but they are waiting for you with information that they have not revealed to you. Mm-hmm. They are holding it. Then that is what that man was running away from, and I'm sure he was advised by his lawyers. Don't wait for the cross-examination by these lawyers.
So you don't think that there was a pressure, maybe got a panic attack, or it was actually a medical condition?
And I've seen people who have had issues like the one Yesani. When you come out of hospital, even the coloration, there has to be. I know he was trying to talk slowly so as just to say, I am still very weak. There was nobody weak there. He was very strong.
But are you giving that an opinion as an expert or a layman's view?
As an experienced man, and I'm very old. Rigathi is only 2 years older than me.
Okay. Professor Owilla, by the way, congratulations, because last week you were on the right path. Probably you need to inform the audience about your achievements.
He's a brilliant man.
No, I want him to make public because I don't want you to use the wrong English.
I mean, the last time I think I did my proposal defense, I spoke too much. So I'm waiting for the due process before I make any pronouncement. But I think, any man who is down and regard is down deserves our sympathy. And I want to believe that he will save himself from all these suckers, as he called it, by just letting it go. I mean, the end has come. The unfortunate thing is that, looking back at the electioneering period, no one would have seen this. But now that we're experiencing this, we're asking so many questions about what we were promised, the brotherhood that we saw during the campaign period, the worship, the church attendance, and the profession of, we are a godly duo that we saw and what we are seeing right now. I think that it raises a lot of questions, and I want to believe that the people who are behind all this, because it's political, and as Calvin says, if it was legal, it would have even been bad, because political, at least you have a chance of mobilizing your political funds to save you. It has not happened for Rigathi Gachagua. But let me say that it needs to make sense for Kenyans. If it doesn't make sense for Kenyans, this will just be another exercise in futility. If there is anything this regime can do, is to save us the suckers and address the issues that affect Kenyans. And they don't even need to look far. They just need to go back to their manifesto, which was brilliant. I think the manifesto by both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza were brilliant. I went through both of them. And I think they've sorted their house. Many people say that it is ODM that has sent Riggy G home. It is not ODM. This thing started from Kenya Kwanza, from within the house. And I think they were sorting their house. And if ODM has come in to sort their house, make it clean, then now it is clean without Riggy G. They need to serve Kenyans. And I want to, keep saying that I'm in ODM. I am not. I'm just a Kenyan who occupies this office I call citizenship. But I want to believe that if there was an opportunity to finish Riggy G, ODM was going to take it. Not because of anything, but because of what Riggy G said during the campaign period about ODM, about Raila Odinga, what he kept saying, even after they had won power, when he had the whole country to unite as a symbol of unity, he kept embarrassing ODM. He kept attacking ODM. He didn't even let President Uhuru Kenyatta retire in peace. So they got an opportunity, and if they sent him home, it is good. I want to believe that they were helping UDA sanitize their house. Now that house is sanitized. As Kenyans, I think we want this regime to succeed. Calvins may not agree with us, but I think that is what we want. Because the success of this regime means that a lot of our problems are going to be sorted. And we can only wish the regime, all the best in whatever they have after the exit of Riggy G, and hope that it will address the problem of Mora, Akinyi, Atieno, and the people of my backyard in Suna East will have more ugali on their table.
Finally, would you say that this impeachment process compromises the security of tenure for a deputy president?
You see, I think that's a very valid question. That if you can go around the country with the resources that Kenya Kwanza went around the country with, win an election, and then in a span of 2 weeks, you are dining with the president, and then you are out of power, it raises a lot of questions. And actually it puts a lot of issues into perspective. Who becomes a running mate? Because the way our constitution is structured, or the way our politics is, no one will go for a running mate who does not have the clout to be a president, or to even aspire to be a president. So you can only win an election with someone who comes with lots of political clout and numbers. And I think the way Riggy G has been dethroned raises a lot of questions on the security of a deputy president. It's a position that going forward, people will know you are not secure.
Would you say that impeachment invalidates that concept of security of tenure?
Impeachment?
Yes.
Not really. Actually, the rigorous and the path through which impeachment goes through, you have to be very bad to be impeached. First of all, somebody has to come to propose that you be impeached. And he has to have offenses that you have actually committed that are impeachable. And he has to take this to the National Assembly. And the National Assembly must agree that those are impeachable by signing, literally signing, about a third of them. Then they go again, now bring everyone in the National Assembly, drawn from every corner of Kenya, to come and agree, surely this guy is impeachable. Then as if to test that, they carry it to the Senate. The Senate must, by 2/3 again, agree that this guy is impeachable. And not just agree from what is reported to them. You sit before them and you are interrogated and they listen to you and they ask questions and they agree you are impeachable. No impeachment can be that rigorous. So, the rigors of impeaching, I think, is the threshold is very high, that if you are impeached, you better go home. But
an MP once said that members of parliament, when there is a serious business, they go to the bathrooms and they get a khaki envelope and they change their positions.
You know, the mouth has no speed, Governor. It can say anything. It can always. People will always talk, depending on which side they favor. They will talk. They will even tell you they were paid 10 million each, 1 million each, 20 bob. They will tell you anything. And you see, the society in which we live with people generally, if something sounds logical, then it is true. So, or if something is repeated many times, then it is true. That is the society in which we live.
Confirms your biases.
Yeah, but from where I sit, President William Ruto had no intention, had no issues with Riggy G until after the Gen Z revolution. And the countdown to the Gen Z revolution, you probably do not know the events that took place before we got there. I once mentioned for you some of those events here, and you almost ran under the table. It began with the removal of George McGoey as chief of staff of the DP. That was not an ordinary removal, because the things they wanted to do there did not require somebody who would leak it. And when you look at the list of the people who then occupied that office, then you know why McGoey was being removed.
It's now Kenya's ambassador to Djibouti.
Yes, and then there was something very dangerous called Limuru 3. If you listen to what was said there. And this Limuru 3, the sponsors included Mr. Rigathi Gachagua. They were including that. And after that, you know what Riggy G did the day Parliament was breached. And when that was happening, General Ogola was 6 feet under. You know, a popular revolution by the people only succeed the day the army sides with them. However much, even if they ban Parliament and State House, if the army does not go on their side, no, the president will not go away. It is only the army who will say, we are taking the president away for safe custody or for his security, and one thing follows another, and if it finds Riggy G in Mombasa, he can announce anything from there. God bless Kenya. God bless the media.
You know, you made some statements that could easily expose you to litigation, libel, slander, all of them rolled into one.
Let me tell you, I am very intelligent and very careful. Anything that I say here, I can stand with you in court and prove it. The fact that you have said the truth about me, however bad to my heart it is, it remains the truth. Those videos of Limuru 3, I have them. The fact that Ogola is 6 feet under, we all know. The fact that he died in an accident and not a natural death, we all know. The fact that he was a Luo, we all know. The fact that his replacement is from Madeira, we all know. The fact that McGoey was a Luo and was removed from Riggy G's office, we all know. The fact that majority of the people working in Riggy G's office are from his clan, we all know. Is there anything I've lied there to warrant any slander?
What you haven't said is that you actually attended that funeral and
I was there with him.
You caused commotion.
I was there with him, and he stood there to tell us how we are so many in government.
Owilla, concluding remarks.
No, I think I agree with Calvin. I mean, it's a rigorous process to get the deputy president out of office. And I think the fact that that process sailed through suggests that there is a lot that probably we don't know that he did. Probably Owidi has.
That's what we were saying, that these
information.
11 charges,
Yes.
are these the actual charges,
Yes.
or there's a hidden charge?
But let me just say this. Ultimately, even that rigorous process has to be aided by some political goodwill, you know. And in this country, looking at what happened in the 2022 general election and all the successive elections, there's a lot of power vested in the presidency and the president himself. And even if there's reason to impeach a deputy president, if the president is not with that intention, it will not succeed. And if there is an intention to remove the deputy president, and the president wants that to happen, the power vested in the president is so immense that nothing can stop that. And I think that is where the problem is. Despite the rigorous process, we still operate in a constitutional dispensation and a cultural, a political culture that vests a lot of clout in the executive.
That has been Fireside. Thanks for investing your time, because we know time is money. See you next week.